Well, माय नीरा जान नर रूप धार नीरा जान नर रूप धार निर्गुण गुण मोचन अघ दूषण जग भूषण चिद्घन ज्ञान जान विमल नयन ज्ञान जान विमल नयन वीक्षणे मोह जाय भास्कर भाव सागर चिर उन्माद प्रेम भक्तार जान जुगल चरण भक्तार जान जुगल चरण तारण भव ऋन्धित जुग ईशार जग विशार जोग सहाय नीर भान समाहित मान नीर भान समाहित मान निरखितव कृपा भञ्जन दुःख गञ्जन करुणाघन कर्म प्राण पान जगत तारण प्राण Baba ॐ ह्रीं ऋतं तमुचलो गुणजित् गुणेभ्यः नाक्तं तेवां सकरुणां तव पादपद्मा मोहाङ्कषं बहुकृतं न भजे जतोऽहं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो भक्तिर्भगश्च भजनं भवभेदकारे गच्छन्तलं सुविपुलं गमनाय त्वं वक्त्रधृतोऽपि हृदये न मे भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ते तरुषा त्वयि तृप्ततृष्णा रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि रामकृष्णे मार्तामृतं तव पदं मरणोर्विनाशम् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारे स्नान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरण जगदेकगम्य तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः ॐ नमो श्रीभगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः ॐ नमो श्रीभगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः ॐ नमो श्रीभगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः ॐ सर्वमङ्गल मङ्गले शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते सृष्टिस्थिति विनाशानां शक्ति भूते सनातने गुणाश्रये गुणमये नारायणी नमोस्तुते शरणागत दीनार्त परित्राण परायणे सर्वस्यार्थे हरे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते जय 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 महामाई की जय जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय।
Check. Hello. Check. Hello. Check. Hello. Check. Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. All right. So we were nearing the end of this lecture by Vivekananda on Maya and Illusion, the first of the series of 3 lectures on the notion of Maya. I won't say the doctrine because it's not a doctrine. as he has insisted several times, it's a statement of existential fact. And what is the aspect of our experience that is emphasized? It is the statement that all our experiences, be it in terms of our epistemological experience, knowledge-based, or emotional experience, feeling-based, joy, sorrow, etc., etc., all our experiences are fraught with contradictions. So every act carries within itself something that is good about it, something that is bad about it. Every emotional reaction carries within itself both joy and sorrow. And it is these polar opposites mixed up together that define our day-to-day existence. This self-contradictory nature of our experience in a day-to-day sense is exactly what is called Maya. It's not some kind of doctrine, it's just a word to summarize this particular existential aspect of our being. Now, once we understand that, see, what exactly is the point of saying this? If it's just part and parcel of our existential life, of our existential being, what's the point of stating it? The point of it is that most of the time, we are drawn to that which is pleasant, that which is joyful, and tend to avoid that which is the opposite, that which is sorrowful, that which is bad. The point of stating this particular idea of Maya is to draw our attention to the fact that there is no way we can get rid of these contradictions in our day-to-day experience and accept these contradictions as part and parcel of our day-to-day experience. This is something that we tend to overlook in our aspirations or our ambitions or our desperate urge to cling or to hold on to that which provides joy, and simultaneously to avoid that which is painful. We tend to forget this simple fact that our day-to-day experience is fraught with these contradictions, with these polar opposites of experience. All that he is doing is he's removing the cobwebs from our brains and the cotton wool from our eyes and asking us to look at things as they are. We tend to think of things in terms of polar opposites, but this is a conditioning of our experience imposed on us by this dual nature of our mind. Mind itself is of the nature of duality, be it in terms of knowledge, be it in terms of emotion, be it in terms of feeling. Whatever dimension of life you take, mind dictates these polar opposites and says that, look, prefer this to the other. And that makes us prefer joy to sorrow, prefer eternal existence to annihilation, prefer knowledge to ignorance, etc., etc., etc. So as soon as there are a pair of opposites, the mind immediately says, oh, I pick this over that, and clings to that which it has preferred. What this discussion has done, it deconditions, removes this particular conditioning of the mind and shows us face to face the contradictory nature of these polar opposites which comprise our existential life. Now, the natural tendency of the mind is to overlook that. Now, what happens when the mind is faced with this fact, with the fact of contradictions in existence? When we are forced to acknowledge that there can be no right without wrong, there can be no good without evil, there can be no happiness without unhappiness or sorrow, there can be no knowledge without ignorance. The immediate reaction of the mind that tends to jump to conclusions without pausing to reflect. This is a certain habit that the child mind has, that the immature mind has. What it does is the following. It does not pause to reflect on this fact. It says, oh, and what is the oversimplification, the non-nuanced interpretation that it arrives at? Oh, everything is a mixture of opposites. Therefore, it's not worth doing anything. This is the reaction of an immature mind when forced to accept that life is full of contradictions. It is this particular reaction of the mind which in its philosophical aspects leads to a kind of naive or superficial agnosticism. A superficial agnosticism because it simply says, oh, then we can know nothing, there's nothing worth knowing. It is precisely this particular non-nuanced conclusion, non-thought through conclusion, non-reflected conclusion that is being countered by Vivekananda in this particular paragraph with which we had ended last time's discussion. So let's start there. Let me repeat once more that the Vedantic position is neither pessimism nor optimism. It does not say that this world is all evil or all good. Two conclusions. One, that the position here is what is this discussion trying to do? It is trying to take us to a point of view where we can see things without color, without our mental colorations. See things as they are, without personal prejudice, without personal preference. Existence of these preferences leads to one of these two positions, pessimism or optimism. And what he says, therefore, is that this position is neither pessimism nor optimism. What else? It does not say that the world is all evil or all good. Neither pessimism nor optimism. This is in terms of favorable emotional reactions. The second, ethical. It's neither evil nor good. What then does it say? And this is said now. It says that our evil is of no less value than our good, and our good of no more value than our evil. In other words, these ethical polarities are both necessary for our subjective growth. To understand that this world is full of these polar opposites, and they are modes of our own consciousness. This is the deeper understanding towards which this discussion is headed. The good and evil, they are bound together. This is the world, and knowing this, you work with patience. And again, that question, what for? Why should we work? If this is the state of things, what shall we do? Why not become agnostics? This is a word that is used in a bunch of senses. Here it is used in the sense of a kind of superficial agnosticism. What kind of agnosticism is this? It says that, okay, there is no comprehensive answer to this question of good or evil. There is no comprehensive answer to what can be culled from this pair of polar opposites. Conclusion, it's not worth probing. Vivekananda agrees with this first statement. There is no comprehensive answer to any of these polar opposites, to which of these we should choose. There is no comprehensive answer. He disagrees with the conclusion that it is not worth knowing. The conclusion does not follow automatically from this hypothesis, is exactly what he is pointing out here. The modern agnostics also, if this is the state of things, what shall we do? Why not become agnostics? The modern agnostics also know there is no solution of this problem, no getting out of this evil of Maya, as we say in our language. And the conclusion, therefore, they tell us to be satisfied and enjoy life. It's this conclusion that he holds up now to show how it is fraught with misunderstanding. Here again is a mistake, a tremendous mistake, a most illogical mistake. And it is this: what do you mean by life? See, the conclusion was live life as it is. And it is there that the fundamental inquiry is being made. You're saying live life as it is, but you're assuming, this is his question to the agnostic, you're assuming that life as such means the same thing to everybody. And that's where he probes. The word which has conflated meanings, different meanings for different people, is what he is pointing out. What do you mean by life? Do you mean only the life of the senses? This is the implication, really. The assumption behind all this that the superficial agnostic seems to be making is that there is no life beyond the senses, and therefore live life as it is. It is this assumption, this unstated assumption, that is being called to question by Vivekananda here. You say that live life as it is. In a certain sense, Vivekananda is also saying the same thing. Live life as it is. But the word life means very different things to these two people. And he's spelling out, he's basically calling out the meaning of life, what that word means, what that word connotes, to the person who is just saying that, okay, live life as it is, and by that he or she means, just lead the life of the senses. And he's asking, do you mean only the life of the senses? In this, every one of us, and then he's about to answer no, and towards that he's building up. In this, every one of us differs only slightly from the brutes. I'm sure that no one is present here whose life is only in the senses. Then this present life means something more than that. Here he is coming to his own point of view. When we talk of life in a slightly deeper sense, we do not mean only sense experiences. What do we mean? And he explains, our feelings, thoughts, and aspirations are all part and parcel of our life. And is not the struggle towards the ideal towards perfection one of the most important components of what we call life? This aspiration to going beyond the senses is something he underscores here, emphasizes here, and points out that it is this idealistic component that's there in every one of us to a greater or lesser extent, that gives meaning to us subjectively, that makes life worth living. And the superficial solution that was being advocated, live life as it is, by which one means only live the life of the senses without inquiry, without questing, without a quest for deeper satisfactions, deeper knowledge, removes from life one of its most vitally important components, namely the quest for something deeper. Yeah? The quest for an ideal. According to the agnostics, we must enjoy life as it is. But this life means, above all, the search after the ideal. The essence of life is going towards perfection. We must have that. And therefore, we cannot be agnostics or take the world as it appears. We cannot be agnostics or take the world as it appears. What does it really mean? Even the deeper agnostics, I mean, people who have an inquiring mind, let's pick perhaps the most famous agnostic in philosophical history that there has been in the 20th century, Bertrand Russell. In an introduction to a book, to one of his books, one of his collections of essays, he says the following: naive realism, that is the view that things are as they are, lead us to physics. And physics tells us things are not as they seem. This is his first statement. What does it mean? It means, say, for example, we look at various things around us. There's this table. And if we start with this view that this is built up of matter, we start inquiring into it. And this leads us to theories of modern physics, which basically tells us that, look, this is composed of protons, neutrons, electrons, etc., none of which is apparent to our senses. That's why Russell says naive realism, namely the point of view that things are as they are, lead us to the study of physics, and physics tells us things are not as they are, not as they seem to be. Hence, naive realism, if true, is false. This is one of those typical quips of Russell. Naive realism, if true, must be false. Hence, it is false. So, I mean, the position basically is what is happening. One is putting forward a kind of philosophical standpoint, which is called naive realism. Things are as they are. And the conclusion is that, look, if that position were true, then it disproves itself, hence it's false. So it cannot stand. Even if you assume it is true, it leads to the conclusion that it is false. Therefore, it is false. That's his statement there. And so, these deeper agnostics reject this position of naive realism. So here, when Vivekananda is referring to agnostics, what he is really referring to is this position that is naive realism. But the argument that he gives is not just this negative argument that Russell provides. He gives something that is much more tangible and real and deep. Namely, that there is a deeper aspect of life. Life means, above all, the search after the ideal. The essence of life is going towards perfection. We must have that and therefore we cannot be agnostics or take the world as it appears. What then is the position of naive realism? What he calls agnosticism here? The agnostic position takes this life minus the ideal component to be all that exists. And this, the agnostic claims, cannot be reached. Therefore, conclusion, therefore he must give up the search. This is what is called Maya, this nature, this universe. This is what we had concluded last time with. I think it needed a little bit of elaboration. That's why we did this. Okay? What it's saying is that if you remove this ideal component, then what you remove from life is a certain very essential quality that adds subjective value, subjective meaning to each one of our lives, independent of what particular religious belief that person might have or might not have in the traditional sense. But this quest after something deeper and ideal, a certain meaningfulness in life, is what defines us as human beings today. Remove that and life becomes meaningless. So, the superficial agnostic attitude is don't ask these questions. Don't ask more fundamental questions. That is any thoughtful person can possibly take. This is the sum and substance of this particular paragraph. Now, we look at this particular ideal component, the quest for meaning. Man's quest for meaning. Humankind's quest for meaning. What does it define for us? And this is the content of the next paragraph. And he basically says that what we call the religious instinct in man rests on this universal experiential fact that we want to have a meaning in our subjective lives. Without that, life becomes not worth living. And this is the principle that he is stating behind the religious urge in a most universal sense. And he says the following: all religions are more or less attempts to get beyond nature. The crudest or the most developed, expressed through mythology or symbology, stories of gods, angels or demons, or through stories of saints or seers, great men or prophets, or through the abstractions of philosophy, all have that one object. All are trying to get beyond these limitations. Thus, you have two completely opposite positions. One that says, take this existential life exactly as it is, do not bother to enquire any further. And here is the position which says that, look, it is precisely this enquiry into something deeper, something more fundamental, something that underlies our existence. It is precisely this enquiry that forms the basis of what we subjectively understand as life today. Without that, take that component out, and all things that we regard as valuable in terms of our life experience falls flat. Art, music, science, enquiry, knowledge, all of it falls flat. Why? Because these are not reducible to our pure utility point of view. The human being has this natural curiosity. It is true that evolution has not shaped us so that we can understand this world around us. Nevertheless, there is something in us which makes us want to understand this world in which we are and make sense of it, make sense of our position in it. The world, us, and the relation between these two, the clearer it is to us, the more meaningful one's life becomes. And this quest, this understanding, is in its most general form the basis of what we call the spiritual or the religious search. It's not just that. I mean, people might not believe in any organized religion at all and yet have this particular enquiry as a defining feature of their lives. In that particular sense, they are the most spiritual of people. They do not subscribe to any organized religion. They might disbelieve all of them. But this enquiry, this universal facet, this universal deep aspect of our being is what defines their existence. And this part of it is universal, so that person has tapped into something that's fundamental, something that is deep, something that is essential to all our beings. Man feels, in one word, they're all struggling towards freedom. It is precisely the sense of limitation that one tries to overcome by this process of enquiry. Man feels consciously or unconsciously that he is bound. He is not what he wants to be. It was taught to him at the very moment he began to look around. That very instant, he learnt that he was bound, and he also found that there was something in him. Two things here. One, the existence, the feeling of being bound, the feeling of bondage. At the same time, an experience of its polar opposite, the experience of freedom. It was taught to him at the very moment he began to look around. But that very instant that he learned that he was bound, he also found that there was something in him which wanted to fly beyond, where the body could not follow, but which was as yet chained down by this limitation. Here we come to the final pair of opposites. One, we look around us and the world limits us. I am a small speck of maybe a bit of star gone wrong in this cosmic firmament, in this cosmic dance that is going around, an insignificant speck of matter. But when I look within, there is a quest to go beyond this limited psychophysical being which defines my existence. And this question, what lies beyond, also translated as not just this, something more. And this is exactly what in one of Shankara's poems, this comes, Atak kim, what next? Is this all? Is there nothing beyond this? The mind is completely unsatisfied with this answer that this is all there is. But there's this elemental urge to get beyond. These two polar opposites, a sense of limitation and simultaneously an urge to get beyond it, to get beyond the sense of limitation, coexist in all of us. And it is precisely the second urge, the urge to break one's bonds, to be free, to be larger, to go beyond all these limitations, is what defines the religious urge or the spiritual urge in the broadest sense, not in the sense of organized religion, but as something constitutional in all human beings, independent of what society they are born in, independent of what organized religion they are born into. That is secondary, tertiary, irrelevant to this. What is most important is this constitutional part of our being, which forces us to re-examine our world around us and try to get beyond it, to seek for freedom, to seek for a larger reality with which we can identify. This quest for an ideal is exactly what is being defined here as, for want of a better word, the religious urge or the spiritual urge. Remove this particular idealistic aspect from our lives, and meaning goes, meaning vanishes. We cannot deny that in our day-to-day existence, in our day-to-day work, we are searching for meanings, consciously or unconsciously, in every little thing we do. What this does, these ideas do, it brings that particular aspect of our being to the fore, asks us to embrace it, make it part and parcel of our being so that we can live it every moment. Not live a life of forgetfulness. Whenever we forget that, we are basically looking at the world without examination, without inquiry, without asking, what is my relationship with all this? And this idealistic quest questions exactly that forgetfulness. That this forgetfulness has different names in Vedantic literature. Some call it moha, some call it aviveka. And the best translation, perhaps, in this Sanat Sujatiya, one of these Vedanta, it's from the Mahabharata, Sanat Sujatiya Samvad. It says pramada. Pramada literally means confused or wrong understanding. Here it really means forgetfulness. And the statement there is pramado vai mrityu. This forgetfulness is really what death is about. At death, physical death, all of our life is forgotten. It's that essence of the experience of death which is there with us every moment of our life. It is there as forgetfulness, as self-forgetfulness. And what this kind of thinking does, it asks questions of that forgetfulness. It basically asks, you have forgotten the meaning in your own life, what use will that be? Is that forgetfulness of any value? Or is it the absence of value in our lives? These are the questions that get raised by this kind of thing. We'll return to this and hopefully finish next time. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.